Hello, it has been a bit of a long winter. It's felt pretty long at times, but there's only 4 days left to go. Meteorologically, spring starts on the 1st of March, which is this Saturday. I'll be having a look at what we can kind of expect as we go through, well, the rest of this week and also through spring as well. And I'll also be looking at a few things around the world and a bit of what's going on in space too. As always, a jam-packed, full deep dive ahead of us, so welcome along. Welcome, especially if this is your first deep dive that you ever watched, but also welcome back if you've watched many of these before. I am Alex Burkill, weather presenter and meteorologist here at the Met Office, and I'm coming to you from our headquarters here in Exeter. Let's get going then. Oh, actually, before I crack on, remember, as always, hit the like button if you've enjoyed anything that I've been talking about today. Do leave your comments and questions if you're watching this on YouTube, as I will be able to answer some of them later on. And also make sure you share this with anyone that you think might be interested. We want to make sure as many people as possible get to enjoy the wonder that is a Met Office deep dive. But let's get going. Let's start off by looking at the weather through the next few days. And at the moment, well, it's going to be a relatively quiet night as we go through Tuesday night and into Wednesday. But through into Wednesday, we do have a weather system coming in from the west, and this is going to bring some fairly heavy rain as we go through Wednesday morning. The rain, it's a relatively narrow band of rain though, so it's not going to bring especially high totals. We're talking 10, 15 millimetres, that kind of thing. So a substantial amount, a wet start for places in the west, but quite quickly that rain clearing away towards the east. And actually, if I just pause it there, because that's quite important, because the rain clears quite quickly away from parts of Northern Ireland, with some, let's see, relatively chilly air nearby, we could actually see a bit of ice first thing on Wednesday morning for parts of Northern Ireland, so do be aware of that. Otherwise, and if I get the rain back on, the other thing that you'll notice is, yes, the rain could be quite heavy, could be a bit of thunder mixed in with it as it pushes its way eastwards. There could also be some winteriness, some sleet, some snow, particularly over higher ground. And let's have a look at that then. If we get up our freezing levels, remember our freezing level is where it's 0 degrees and how high above sea level that 0 degree layer is. And there are lots of blues indicating that the freezing level as we go through, well, this is Tuesday midday, is around the 600-800 metre mark, so pretty high ground for that case. But as we dart ahead through this evening, and actually if I just play it through it's going to go a bit slowly, but there will, as we go through into, actually let's go ahead to tomorrow morning. Through tomorrow morning there are some places where you can see the freezing levels dropping to around the 200 to 400 metre mark. And so as that frontal system pushes its way in with freezing levels, yeah, around 200 to 400 metres in some places, some sleet and snow over modest higher ground. We're talking about 300 to 400 metres, that kind of thing. That's where you're likely to see a bit of winteriness as we go through tomorrow because of that band of rain coming through. Like I said, though, most places are seeing rain, could be a bit heavy, but it should move through relatively quickly. That doesn't mean it's totally dry thereafter. Actually, if I go to the UK view, and if we'd get rid of that for a second, let's go to Wednesday, and you can see this is Wednesday 1 o'clock. By this point, the band of rain's really cleared away. Most places just lingering in the far east of East Anglia, perhaps tip of Kent, but behind it, a rash of showers, many places at risk of seeing, yes, some sunny spells, but also plenty of showers, and some of these could be quite heavy. There could be some rumbles of thunder, even a bit of hail mixed in with them as well. At this time of year, you wouldn't expect particularly large hail, just generally quite small stuff, but nonetheless, yeah, we could see some, well, further sleet and hail snow, but also some hail and perhaps even some thunderstorms mixed in. Notice across parts of northern Scotland actually avoiding, well, both most of the rain from this band, but also most of the showers. So a fairly decent day there, a lot of dry weather to be had. What happens thereafter? And let's go back to the bigger picture. And we have, if I dart ahead to, well, Thursday morning, well, this is Wednesday evening, but that system then clears away. And actually, as we go into Thursday into Friday, we have this high pressure building from the west. Now, you all no doubt know, if you're a regular deep dive viewer or even just a regular amateur meteorologist, that you'll no doubt know high pressure generally settles our weather down. And that's what we're going to see as we go through the last few days of meteorological winter. Yes, high pressure firmly dominating as we go through Thursday and into Friday. With that in mind, through Thursday Thursday, we're going to see a few showers around. If I go back to the UK view for Thursday, a few showers, but these will be easing as we go through the day because of that high pressure building. Still some brisk winds towards eastern parts, but these will be easing as well. On the whole though, many places actually having a decent day with some bright sunny spells. But if we dart ahead to Friday, and with high pressure more firmly in control for much of the UK, it's looking like a pretty fine day indeed for the last day of meteorological winter. A few showers around, perhaps where we see any cumulus bubbling up. We could see a couple of showers developing, but on the whole, it is looking generally fine. Some decent, bright, and at times sunny weather. Not necessarily warm though. If we have a look at the temperatures, because of the time of year, let's go back to this view, and if I put temperatures on, if I dart ahead to Friday, with the high pressure, we have some pretty cold air around us as well. And with high pressure, like I said, it turns fairly calm. We're going to have some clear skies as we go through Thursday night into Friday. Calm winds, clear skies, and some cold air. Perfect ingredients for it to be pretty chilly. Now, if we look at a couple of things, what do I want to show you this? Let's get up our temperatures. And if we do our minimum temperatures for the next few nights, and actually I'm going to ignore Tuesday morning. So these are Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning. You can see, Friday morning, it looks pretty chilly indeed. These are your towns and cities. So most places holding up a degree or so above freezing, but in rural spots, it could fall several degrees below, even across some parts of England. We're looking at -4, -5 Celsius. So that does mean that there is the risk of, well, some frost perhaps as we go through into Friday. What else can I show you with regards to this? Well, here we go. These are our temperature anomalies for our overnight temperatures, so our minimum temperatures for the next few nights. So we have Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. And you can see actually across Scotland, the northern half of Scotland, especially even parts of Northern Ireland, Thursday night into Friday night. I feel like these may be labelled slightly wrong because I thought Thursday night was going to be the colder one. But nonetheless, through Thursday night into Friday night, they are going to be quite chilly. I think that should say Friday morning. But so a cold, perhaps even frosty start across parts of England and Wales with temperatures significantly below average for the end of February. And even into Saturday, we keep with the colder air across southern parts, something a bit milder though across more northern areas, which I'll talk about in a second. Actually, let's talk about it in a second, because the other thing that I wanted to show you, the difference between Thursday morning and Friday morning. So on the left-hand side, these are the forecast temperatures for Friday morning, and they're highlighting the coldest spots. You may not be able to read the digits, but lots of places coming up a few degrees below freezing. Like I said, -4, -5 possible through the early hours of Friday morning in some rural spots. But I think the big contrast in comparison between the temperatures between Thursday morning and Friday morning on this chart on the right, the blues indicating many places going to be markedly colder on Friday morning than they will have been on Thursday. Then what happens thereafter as we go towards the weekend? And so, like I said, high pressure dominating for Friday, but then if I press play, and we then have a frontal system that's coming in from the northwest. There's an area of low pressure somewhere towards Iceland, Greenland area, and the front that trails down is then going to make its way southeastwards as we go into the weekend. Now on Saturday, we still firmly have high pressure across the bulk of the UK. So this front's going to kind of bash against that high pressure. It's not going to make much progress. The rain's really going to be confined to Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland. It could be a little bit heavy for a time. We're talking 10, 15 millimetres perhaps in some places again across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it's going to ease and break up as we go through the day. It's not going to make much progress south, so actually for much of the country, if I just dart back a little bit, for much of the country, I'll put my cloud on across the bulk of England and Wales, particularly towards the south, southeast. Saturday looks like another largely fine day. Some rain trying to come in from the northwest. Exactly how far south that front pushes, there is some uncertainty, but I think it's going to stay mainly across Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps the north of England and maybe North Wales. But on the whole, for southern areas, it looks like it will be largely fine. Worth bearing in mind, a couple of things. that we could see some cumulus, some fair weather cloud bubbling up across southern parts, so that doesn't rule out a shower developing, but I think generally it's going to be mostly dry. And then the other thing to bear in mind is, although this front is pushing its way southwards and then it's losing a lot of its oomph as it hits against this high pressure, there will still be the remnants of it, so there could be quite a cloudy zone somewhere across like central, perhaps even northern parts as we go through Saturday night into Sunday. And so this could bring a bit of rain perhaps at times. It's going to keep things quite grey really for some places, but behind it something a bit brighter, and to the southeast of this something a bit clearer, should I say, rather than brighter. But exactly where this front's going to be lying in terms of the cloud amounts, well, that's still all to play for the time being. Let's run this a bit further forward, because that high pressure trying to cling on as we go into Sunday, but then it's kind of a rinse and repeat in as much as another area of low pressure somewhere towards Iceland, Greenland area, and then another front makes its way southeastwards as we go through Sunday. A bit slower coming through, and so it's probably going to be late Sunday, more so into Monday, that we start to see that front actually pushing its way in. But nonetheless, a bit of a unsettled picture towards the northwest of the UK, some stronger winds. If I just put those on, you see some stronger winds towards the northwest, and a greater chance of seeing some wet weather all the time towards the south-southeast. You have a greater chance of staying largely dry. So some decent fine weather as we go into the start of spring for many places. Not everywhere, but for many places there will be some fine weather around. Just exactly how far across these fronts get, that's where there is a little bit of uncertainty. So that's just something to bear in mind. Now, what else did I want to show you? There's the risk of fog as we go through the next few days. As you would expect with high pressure this time of year, I know it is, we're getting close to spring, but nonetheless, it is still the time of year where we do get some fog. So behind me, I have the probability of seeing visibility below 200 meters for the mornings as we go into the weekend. So Friday morning, Saturday morning, Sunday morning. And the position of where we're most likely to see the fog changes a little bit across Friday morning. It's into parts of northwest England, into the Midlands, towards like the borders area of Scotland and perhaps parts of Northern Ireland. Then the focus of it shifts a little bit further eastwards. It's more for East Anglia as we go through into Saturday morning. And then through Sunday morning, there's a bit more moisture around because of that front that's tried to push its way in. And so there's a greater chance perhaps of a few places across, well, much of England and Wales, but again, the borders area, seeing some fog on Sunday morning. So do take care. Below 200 meters, that's fairly dense. It could be a bit denser than that in some places. So if you are heading out on the roads early on these mornings, then do be aware there could be some poor visibility issues. Fortunately, because the sun's getting some more strength behind it, once the sun does come up, we would expect it to clear away relatively quickly, so shouldn't cause too many issues. Great, I think that's all I wanted to talk about. Oh, actually, the only other thing that I did want to highlight, if we just go back to this picture, if I go towards the end of, as far as my graphics go, where's the jet stream? There it is, let's get rid of that for the time being. And where's this, let's go to the end, so Sunday midday. And this kind of setup with lower pressure towards the northwest of the UK, higher pressure towards the south, that looks likely to be the general pattern as we go through, well, next week and deeper into spring. Now, there's always been some signs that we are going to get into a more changeable, unsettled pattern around a week or so's time, maybe a week to 10 days away. That change has kind of been delayed, and so we've always been talking about it coming in around a week or 10 days' time. And so it is going to take a bit of a change as we go through next week, probably now towards the end of next week, that we'll start to see something a bit more unsettled predominantly. But I think as a whole, next week's looking a bit of a north-south split, more unsettled towards the north, drier towards the south. But we probably will see our temperatures generally rising as we go through. Actually, I didn't really show you much about temperatures for the week that we've just had. So let's have a look at those. Let's start off by looking at our minimum temperatures. And I keep picking the wrong thing. But here we go. I didn't want to talk about minimum temperatures. Let's talk about temperatures as a whole. I've picked Arsenal FC again. I have a habit of doing that, but I was meant to pick London, but nonetheless. So here are our temperatures, and the point that I wanted to show is that it is getting colder as we go towards, well, Thursday, Friday and into the weekend. If we look at the minimum temperatures, you can see dropping down, well, Arsenal dropping some points as we go into the weekend. Let's hope that doesn't happen this weekend. Let's have a look at Manchester. Oh, okay, they're picking up some points this weekend. Let's hope that's not the case. But my point being, there's some colder air. The further towards the south you are, if I just pick a random place, Legoland, then you can see that there is a drop in temperatures as we go through Friday into Saturday, and then it gradually starts to pick up next week. Meanwhile, further north, if we just pick a random place, the drop is going to be a little bit earlier, and then by Friday, Saturday time, we're already seeing those temperatures. I think this is a high site, hence why those temperatures are so low. We're going to see those temperatures rising a little bit earlier because of those frontal systems that are coming in from the northwest. So when you're under the high pressure, it could be quite chilly, but as that comes through, it could be, but as the more unsettled weather starts to come through, we're going to see our temperatures rising. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is this trend of things getting a little bit warmer. Let's just pick somewhere that looks a bit warmer, perhaps. Derby. Trend for temperatures rising. So as we go into next week, and like I said, across southern parts, good chance that we'll have a decent amount of fine, dry, at times sunny weather, and with temperatures probably a little bit above average for the time of year, actually feeling pretty spring-like. At this time of year, you know, the sun's got some decent strength to it, and so in the sunshine, feeling pretty pleasant, away from any unsettled weather towards the northwest. And then the other caveat that I did need to point out, the Deputy Chief made me, or wanted to stress this, whilst there will be more unsettled, or likely to be more unsettled weather towards the northwest, some systems are probably going to push their way southeastwards across the whole of the UK as we go through next week. And so there will be some wet weather across southern parts, but just less than further north. Great, right. I think that's all I wanted to cover UK weather-wise. I will also, like always, every Tuesday we update the 14-day outlook, which is available on our app. So do check that out, as I'll be going into, well, I'll be showing some extra charts to suggest what we can expect through the next 2 weeks. But the global weather that I wanted to talk about is the cold air across parts of the Middle East, but that's not really showing up because I've gone too far ahead in the future. But if we go to now, and yeah, across parts of Iraq, around Baghdad, Syria, temperatures are around 10 to 15 degrees below average at the moment, and we've already seen some sub-zero temperatures by night. And whilst we're starting to see a recovery, if I just play this through, you can see the colder air starting to clear away further north. So temperatures are picking up through the next couple of days. Nonetheless, we could still have some nights with temperatures of around -5. And that's pretty cold. Remember, in this part of the world, a lot of people are displaced, a lot of people living under canvas, and so the cold weather is going to have some significant impacts. Add to that the fact that to alleviate the cold, there'll be some extra fires burning, and that's going to lead to poor air quality, which will also have an impact on people who are living, who are displaced at the moment. So that is a bit of a cause for concern at the moment across parts of the Middle East as we go through the next couple of days. But fortunately, temperatures are rising back to average as we go through the rest of this week. Now, like I said, winter almost at an end, meteorological winter, woohoo, we've almost made it through. But I just wanted to have a quick look at some of the stats following in this season. And I don't have the full details here. We will be releasing the provisional stats on Friday, I think. Friday's the last day, so they won't be the full stats because we won't get those until Saturday. But we'll be releasing the more detailed stats on Friday, so do check that out. We'll probably be doing a blog, but you'll be able to see it across our social media. But the main headlines, and some of them may surprise you, from the winter just gone, 2024 to 25, was that it has been milder than average. If we look at mean temperature, it's been around ½ a degree milder than average, so nothing special, but just ever so slightly. It has been drier than average. Now, I think that might surprise some of us. It's not been massively drier. Now, up until this point, I have data up to and including the 24th of February, so still a few days left for like 4 days left of winter, and there is some wet weather to come through, Wednesday, for example. So, but at the moment, it's around 87% of the average rainfall you'd expect through the whole season. So it's probably going to be close to like the 89, that kind of figure mark by the time that we get to the end of the season. But nonetheless, it has been slightly drier than average, which I think will surprise many of us. Obviously, we have had some wet weather events, even just this gone weekend on Sunday across parts of South Wales. There was some very heavy rain, and that led to some severe flooding in places. And you know, we had Storm Airwin, which had some heavy rain associated with it, and even earlier in the winter we had some very wet spells. And I think that just goes to illustrate that even in a drier than average season, there will be wet spells, impactful wet weather. And so when we talk about our 3-month outlooks, which I'll come on to in a second for spring, when we talk about, you know, we're saying it's more likely to be drier than wetter than average, that doesn't mean that we're saying there won't be any severe wet weather, not at all. What it means is just as a whole, when you look back on the season, drier than average. Anyway, so yeah, slightly drier than average, but the greater or more significant percentage comes when we look at our sunshine amounts. And actually, we've only had around 81% of our average winter's sunshine so far this season. Now we do have a couple of quite sunny days ahead. Obviously today's pretty sunny. We don't have the data for today, and we've also got well, Thursday, Friday, decent amount of sunshine on both those days. So I think the percentage actually of sunshine will go up a little bit, but it's still likely to be quite a bit cloudier than average when we look at winter as a whole. And I think that's given the whole feel to things. It's been pretty grey, and I think everyone's felt that through, well, the last couple of months. And so that's why with some decent spring sunshine around through the next week or so, many people will be a bit grateful for that, for the change to something a bit brighter. Right, but speaking of seasonal outlooks, and our 3-month outlook has just gone live on our website if you want to check it out. This is the 1-month outlook, so this is the outlook for March, and the main thing that it highlights is that there's a higher chance than normal of it being slightly milder than average, or that it being milder than average, a slightly higher chance of it being wetter, and a slightly higher chance of it being windy. So that goes with the idea that we're going to see some wet and windy weather coming through as we go through, well, March. But if we compare this to what we can expect through the whole of spring, so March, April, May, and the statistics are slightly different. Still going with the idea of being warmer, so more likely to be warmer than cooler than average. But actually, if we look at the rainfall, the 3-month period as a whole, more likely to be drier than wetter. And so really, I think it's during the first part of spring where we're most likely to have some wetter, because if we look at the winds, actually it's about an equal percentage chance of it being calmer or windier than average, very, very close. So the wetter, windier weather is most likely during the beginning of spring, more so March, than towards the end at the moment. And that goes in line when we come up with these 3-month outlooks, our contingency planning forecasts. There are lots of things that we look at, all the teleconnections going on around the world. So a couple of things, obviously there's La Nina in the tropical Pacific, and that's led to an increased chance of a positive NAO, North Atlantic oscillation, which then increases the chance of some westerly winds during the first part of spring, which goes in line with the more unsettled, wetter, windier weather coming in from the west. And I won't get the chart back up, but that goes in line with, you know, low pressure towards the north and high pressure towards the south, goes in line with the idea of a westerly wind coming through. So that is it's all in agreement, really, the forecast with these outlooks for what we can expect as we go through at least the beginning part of spring. Other things that we look at, obviously there's the stronger than usual stratospheric polar vortex also leads to a greater chance of seeing westerly winds during the first part of spring. And so there are a couple of things on offer as well. So there are just a few things that we've looked at. So that's why I think as a whole, spring is likely to be, well, we're suggesting slightly drier is more likely than slightly wetter, but to be honest, near average is the most normal. Warmer than average is more likely, but worth bearing in mind that there is a climate change element to this, and so warmer than average you would expect it to be slightly warmer than average based on what's happened in the past because of our warming climate. And as a whole, whether or not it's windier than average, well, it looks like near average most likely, but just to begin with, to the start of the period, wetter and windier is more likely during March. Always worth bearing in mind, whilst I've said warmer is most likely, that doesn't rule out any colder spells. We could still have some wintry hazards as we go through March. There could be some colder spells. They're just slightly less likely, and they're less likely to be the main feature when we look at March and also spring as a whole. And, you know, there will be some settled dry weather through March, and there will be some dry settled spells as we go deeper into spring. I think they'll become more likely as we go deeper into April and May. So perhaps something to look forward to, depending on what you like weather-wise. Now, okay, moving away from weather now for the last few bits of this deep dive, and we've talked about it quite a lot, I think, over recent weeks, and so far this year there's been the opportunity to view several of the planets in the sky in something called a planetary parade, because all the orbits are lining up to make it able to view them in the sky. But as we go through this week, there's actually the chance to view all 7 of them, because Mercury is joining the party. And it's worth bearing in mind a few things. That actually Mercury and Saturn are going to be pretty low to the horizon, and particularly, well, yeah, both Mercury and Saturn, they're only really going to be visible for a few minutes after the sun has dropped below the horizon, so after sunset, and so they're going to be quite tricky to see. So actually the chances of being able to see all 7 planets simultaneously is relatively slim, but it's not out of the question. So do try and head out through the evenings this week if you're interested in viewing this, because you may get to see all 7 planets. Jupiter and Venus probably be the easiest to see. Mars should be relatively easy to see. Uranus you may be able to see with the naked eye, but you probably need some strong binoculars or perhaps a telescope. And also for Neptune you probably need a telescope as well. And like I said, Mercury, because they're going to dip below the horizon quite quickly, less chance of seeing those. Also worth bearing in mind, even once the sun's set during that twilight period, there's still some light around, so that will make it even harder to see Mercury and Saturn. But some advice if you're going out trying to look at it. So it's the evenings that you have the greatest chance of seeing all 7. Give yourself some time for your eyes to adjust, so go outside and allow your eyes to adjust to the light for a good 20-30 minutes or so. Try to get away from artificial light, and that will help you, well, really have a good chance of seeing it. If you are able to go out and view it, take any photos, perhaps do share them with us, as we would like to see them. But I thought it would be worthwhile looking at the weather through the evenings to gauge whether or not, actually let's get up the full view, to gauge whether or not you have a good chance of seeing it, because actually the weather's fairly favourable. And if we have the next few, that's not what I wanted to show. It's okay, we'll go for this view. So through Tuesday evening, through this evening, there's a scattering of showers around. So obviously if you're under a shower, cloudy spell, not so great, but many places having some clear skies, so not too bad at all. If we dart ahead to Wednesday evening, a bit cloudier because of the system that's pushed through, but nonetheless, northern Scotland, some parts of Wales, southwest England, maybe the northeast having some clear skies, so not terrible view for quite a few places. Through Thursday evening, by now that's the system will have well and truly cleared, and so actually many places through Thursday evening having a good chance of seeing some decent clear skies. Then also through Friday evening, which I think is when we have the greatest chance of seeing Mercury, even if only for a short period of time, actually largely clear skies across the bulk of England and Wales, a bit of cloud here and there. Cloudier across Scotland and Northern Ireland, so not a great evening there, but actually for much of England and Wales, actually some decent clear skies. So actually through much of this week, the next few nights, chances of seeing it, if that's something you're interested in and aiming to go out through an evening, it's not looking too bad. There are definitely some clear breaks, some opportunities to see perhaps all 7 planets at once. Now, speaking of space, and not strictly weather related, but I thought I'd end with some good news. And you've no doubt heard about the asteroid that NASA had been talking about, bringing the potential of impacting the Earth as we head towards, well, it was 2032, around December 2032, that they were suggesting that it's going to come near the Earth. And Well, fortunately, the percentage, the probability, the chance of it actually hitting the Earth has now decreased. But if we run through the timeline, and on the 31st of January, NASA was saying the impact probability was around 1.6%. Now, apologies, this graphic is a little unclear, but in the center we have Earth, and the circle around it is the orbit that the moon's taking. And then this line is the position uncertainty as the asteroid comes towards or close to the Earth. And so you can see it's quite uncertain. But as we went through, well, the last week or so, by the 10th of February, NASA had increased the chance of it impacting Earth up to 2.1%. And then by the 18th of February, the chance had gone up to 3.1%. Now, they did also stress that even if it did impact the Earth, the chance of it causing anything major was actually quite small. It probably wouldn't cause too many issues. But nonetheless, this was, from my point of view, quite an alarmingly high percentage. But fortunately, it then did drop down. By the 19th, it dropped down to 1.5%. By the 20th, it was only 0.3%. And then on Sunday, they dropped it even further to 0.004%, which, from my point of view, is much more comfortable. Now, this was many years away, 2032, and now the percentages drop down. So Ben Affleck, Bruce Willis, you can step down. It doesn't look like it's going to hit the Earth. That being said, they're saying it's slightly less than 2% chance that it could actually hit the moon currently. So that's still something to watch out for. But otherwise, I thought I'd end with some relatively good news. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive. Like I said at the start, if you have any questions or comments, do leave them, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. I will be answering some of the comments straight away, but we also like to answer any questions in our Weather Studio Live, which is available on our YouTube channel at 12:15 every Friday. It will be Honor and me again this week, so I'll be answering some of your questions that you put in the comments on this deep dive on YouTube. And like I said at the start, also hit the like button, hit the share button, make as many people aware as possible that we do these deep dives to try and get the message across. The other thing that I would be interested in knowing is how many of these deep dives have you watched before? Is this the first deep dive you've watched? Or have you watched a few before? Or maybe are you in the 100 club? Have you watched more than 100 deep dives, whether they've been presented by myself, by Honor, by Aidan, by the other Alex, or perhaps even Annie? Do let us know in the comments, because I think it would be quite interesting to know how many of these deep dives people have watched. Otherwise, well, Honor will be back on Wednesday with the 10-day trend. Like I said, I will be updating the 14-day outlook available on our app. And also, Honor and I will be back on Friday for our Weather Studio Live, available on YouTube at 12:15. But whatever you're up to through the rest of winter and into spring, I do hope you have a great one. Bye-bye.